your eyes begin to open. And you see all around you the different destruction and chaos that's happening throughout the streets of Mar. There is different buildings and screams of different people kind of scattering through the streets and running to try to get to safety. There are different Asimers and things that are fighting other Warforged warriors that look like Kraid. Kraid, you're seeing this almost seems like through the eyes of Kraid himself. So you're watching as he is fighting through the streets and fighting different Asimers that are amidst this whole tapestry of this place. There's explosions, smoke. There is different spells flying across the sky as swords are clanking and shields are clamoring. There is this massive kind of surge that kind of goes through the ground as the ground begins to rumble. And a surge of energy that kind of just wafts out as everything kind of shakes and clamors. Buildings begin to tumble and the buildings around begin to slowly kind of warp and the sky begins to turn to this dark grayish blue with the metallic taste in the air. The Warforged kind of mechanisms of Kraid 6 now just moving with the quickness and the speed, and you're seeing the different parts of him that are completely new and shiny and metallic than back and restored the way they were before. You realize, all of you see, this is the calamity that happened to the Empire of Mar. As you get to this point, you see Kraid continuously fighting. There's no sense of stopping whatsoever. There is this level of kind of almost robotic, orders of just continuously moving and fighting and striking people down. You're seeing glowing winged figures that resemble people that you've met before. There's different blood as it cascades down onto the stone in architecture of the area. There is another kind of surge of energy as another kind of shake kind of cascades through the ground. This is when people begin to panic, and there's the army that is the Warforged army is marching with in groups to the different groups of the capital, and you see kind of high up above the skyline of the area that there is this smoke coming from the palace, that there is this lightning and surge of just blue energy that's through the sky and almost around the castle in this kind of dome sequence. Kraid is following orders. He's not able to break away from the directives that he's been given. There is a level of just, it's almost like he has no mind of his own. There's a continuous focus. And he stands before another Asimer that, as this next level of eruption kind of goes through the ground, the Asimer begins to flee. And as Kraid kind of mindlessly takes another swipe with the sword, there's a massive explosion of the building that's next to him. And he is kind of thrown to the side. As he stands and gets up, there is just a quietness that seems to have fallen across the whole kingdom itself, as if the air around is this vacuum, and everything has just gone dire. More explosions and more rumblings. A surge of arcane energy kind of erupts again and again. These are just different waves as there is lightning that kind of rips a tear into the street. The air in front of Kraid kind of almost like rips into this like alternate reality that all of a sudden onto the ground, an unconscious Kenku falls in front of Kraid. Kraid sees this body and doesn't know what to think or to process, but there's a level of directive. There's no sense of compassion. Seems to be a hollow, emotionless kind of gaze until there is a symbol that is revealed on the shoulder pauldron of the Kenku. This is the adventurance symbol. It is an eye with two moons that has shown itself as this Kenku has fallen onto the ground. And the symbol kind of pauses Kraid for a moment. He almost freezes in his tracks as the chaos begins to swirl more and more around him. This creature seems hurt. There's a level of direness as the Kenku kind of slowly starts to come to and move his arm kind of slightly as if to reach out. And an intense arcane flash lights up the sky with this blue haze in the air as the Empire goes silent, as if there's a vacuum of sound all around. And everything stops. Kraid, almost as if his memory froze. The image of this Kenku on the ground as he kneels down to look at the body, he notices that there's still life in this creature. There's more to it than something that's dying in the street. And it's as if what seemed like this black and white kind of mindless world has shifted to this kind of vibrancy that wasn't there before. And you get the kind of visage that this isn't, you're not seeing this as what's happening around. This is something internal. This is something within his mind. And in a flash, he makes a split decision there as the next wave of kind of arcane energy erupts. He decides to pick up the Kenku. The arcane energy emitting from the capital, the palace at the capital, he looks and sees that there is like a small like tower up at the top begins to just like slowly like fall as it breaks off the top of the palace. Now once was like this kind of lightning cloud is now becoming this big giant blue orb that's cascading and outward farther and farther. He picks up the Kenku and turns and begins to run. Now this speed and air that is kind of just like going around Kraid as he's kind of running through the streets, there is this sense of urgency and panic that you wouldn't think would be in a warforged kind of soldier or an automaton of this nature. The urgency of just jumping over different buildings as they are falling down next to him and crashing, the jumping between between different people, of groups of running, fleeing civilians. There's this level of speed to which is never, he wouldn't even think to be humanly possible. The clamoring of his feet just hitting the stone tiles of the ground as this like massive just the eruption happens behind as you see that he looks over his shoulder, and what was buildings and the palace over top has erupted into this plume of lightning and cloud-like energy going into the center as the dust and clouds of lightning roll from the center behind him, and he just keeps running through the different alleys and streets and buildings that there just seems to be going on for no end. This continent-sized city that is the Empire of Mar. He's running through trying to save this Kenku. The arcane components in the body all humming and whirling immensely as his body seems to be in like overdrive. This very similar to a humanistic fight or flight motif has been kind of set in this Warforged, and there's this version of adrenaline coursing through his circuits as everything seems to just be heightened. There was a level of break within as this cloud of smoke and fire and arcane is just slowly encroaching behind him as he continues to run and run. There is this level of just, you can feel, almost begin to feel this heat and kind of electricity that's behind, that just kind of like, it's almost like when you touch something with static electricity and you could feel that energy between. It's like right on his heels. There's a level of, it almost seems to be pointless, but he continues to run. Knowing that Warforged have different staminas, he doesn't need to rest. He's running for what feels like hours until, without looking, he notices, again, to check behind him to see if he is like making it through, does not notice in front of him a tear in the reality. As he runs straight into it, they fall through and go straight into this otherworldly kind of between universes space. And they seem like they're just slowly falling together through this, the darkest of darks, in this kind of aurora borealis like colors that kind of keep sweeping across. This level of weightlessness to the point where this is it. This feels like the end. You feel that Kraid has accepted this fate of the end. And they fall what feels like days. You're watching this level of time pass and expand without fail, that there is this nothingness, that they're just slowly going into this vantage point of just of an expanse. His body begins to kind of strain in the force and push of the velocity around him, as if like the pressure is changing going deep into the ocean. As they reach this point where another crackle of energy goes across, another tear rips open, and they fall through it. They come out of this tear and land in a quad that's in one of these the outskirting boroughs of the city. They slowly they fall separately from each other, but Kraid begins to try to stand, and as he does, there's this rust and decay that's now on his body that it seems as if every mechanical portion of his body has aged 100 years in a matter of seconds. And he tries to stand, and as he's kind of stumbling, he looks back, and the epicenter of the implosion is just slowly stretching further and further. It seems as if they were tossed miles and miles ahead of where they were. And as this capital city is no more than just this cloud of smoke, ash, fire, and lightning, what it seems at least, is his leg kind of crumbles a bit as he stands, and he kind of drags his broken leg, kind of walking over to Lyle that's on the ground, and he picks him up, and he starts to try to move forward, but he can't. It's as if he is frozen in the space that he's in, or just running is pointless. 60 feet ahead of him is another tear in the reality. He looks back once more and sees that there is maybe seconds before the implosion will reach him. He lifts Lyle, and he does everything. He kind of twists his body and throws him as hard as he can into this other tear. And as Lyle slowly kind of opens his eyes with a crack to see, potentially as his consciousness comes to again, he sees as he enters this other rift, Kraid swallowed up by the arcane implosion. And everything kind of goes black.